Yo, what's up guys? Today I'm just going to be doing a PC build, and in this PC build I'm going to be like explaining the step behind everything and like what I've done to make stuff fit and things like that. This is my YouTube and gaming PC. Hope you enjoy, like and subscribe. Okay, so first get your M.2 SSD, RAM, motherboard and CPU. So let's talk about M.2s first. I'll get onto other parts later. So you will need an M.2 now. If you have a SATA SSD or HDD, which is hard drive, just leave it, it will be useful later. And so first get a Philips head 1. I used 1 and it worked perfectly, but I'm pretty sure the real one's probably Philips head 0. And it works for me, yeah. So I took off the M.2 cover. Some people just have it bare on their motherboard without a cover, and there will be a pre-installed standoff most likely with already a screw in, or you might find the screw in the like motherboard box. As I showed you there's a thermal pad that you normally have to take like a little film off, which I've already done, and then just put the standoff on the right size if it's not already. With me it was, and then you just screw down the M.2 SSD. And so with storage, there's M.2 SSDs or M.2 form factor. There's also like really fast ones or just normal SSD speeds, but like in an M.2 form factor. I've just got a really fast one actually. Managed to get it for only £100, which I would say is a banging deal. I've got a 5-year warranty, 1 terabyte of storage, and yeah, the things you should consider when buying an SSD or HDD is warranty, speeds, and like just yeah, price. You just have to kind of go for it. So with my, as I'm showing here, it's kind of bent, but I've done a lot of research and apparently it's going to be fine. But obviously if you're very concerned about it, or it's like more than mine, then you should probably get a new thermal pad and like just install it. And here as I'm showing, I'm opening the RAM slots. Then when it comes to RAM, there's many different things you have to think of. So there's a CL factor, so like the lower CL is better. I think I have CL16, which isn't amazing, but I mean it will do. Then there's speed in megahertz. Mine rated at 3200 megahertz, which you have to choose in the BIOS later on because normally it's just put on the lowest speed, and then you just install it. Remember guys, don't rush this. As shown here, I kind of did struggle, and if you guys struggle, don't worry about it, just go slowly. And if it feels like you're going to break something, just don't worry about it. The motherboard's like already manufactured for this like kind of tension and stuff, and then you want to see those like little things at the top pop. Okay, now let's go on to the CPU. So you just unlock it by just putting the lever up, and there should be an arrow. Then take the arrow corresponding onto the CPU and put it like, arrow to arrow. You just have to kind of find the arrow. I already kind of know where it goes. With AMD, it's always going to be like this. And yeah, I got some thermal paste early on my fingers, and I had to remove it with a special isopropyl alcohol, which have now made my fingers a bit like peely and stuff. Okay, so now that it shows, there's Intel and AMD. Intel i3, i5, i9, and i7. Well, I did that in the wrong order. i3, then i5, then i7, then i9, and then there's Ryzen 3, 5, 7, and 9. And these are kind of just like what you want to use them for. Okay, I will explain it in a sec. So this is the thermal paste. You just want to apply it. Sometimes you have pre-applied thermal paste already on your cooler. And PC Part Picker is a great place to like get some tips on. Well, just compatibility is perfect. Like I've never had a problem. And here as shown, AMD. There's first gen, second gen, third gen, and fourth gen's probably going to come out soon. And these are the chipsets shown, which are like compatible and which need a BIOS update, and which aren't compatible. So with AMD, it's like they've tried to make as many boards compatible with each generation. And so how I said earlier, i3s and stuff like that, they're like just kind of what kind of line it is. So i3 I would say budget, i9 is like full, if you want full performance, if you don't care about money, I would say, and it kind of goes up like that. And then chipsets are just like whether you want to overclock. Okay, here I'm just gonna show you I'm plugging in the CPU fan header onto the CPU fan header on the motherboard, or like CPU fan cable onto the CPU fan on the motherboard. You can find it on the manual, but I just found the label. It says CPU fan on the motherboard. Then I tried to tuck in the cable under the cooler, and I didn't explain earlier, but when I was showing in the video, I put on the two latches and I put down the retention arm, and it works perfectly fine. So going back to CPU, how there's different lineups. Oh right, before I talk about CPUs, here is like a cable, and there's two cables for this cooler. There's the USB 2.0 and there's the RGB one. The RGB one, so you can like use Aura Sync, but I find that useless. I just normally configure the Wraith Prism and then just sync it with my other lights. So I just use the USB 2.0 because you can like customize more features. The other one's just syncing with all the other lights, which I found to be kind of weird because it doesn't actually fully sync. So I've just decided to just use the USB 2.0. The addressable RGB one that I'm not plugging in just goes to the addressable RGB header. It's the one with 4 pins, not 3, the 4 one, and you'll have it labeled with like 12 volt, and you have to like, on the motherboard board it will have like stuff labeled, and you have to get the cable right way around because you could like end up breaking your LED strip or just general your RGB lighting. Okay, so just have to, if you look at it, you'll easily be able to see where it plugs in. Like there's a little like filled in gap, and then that's also where the pin isn't present. You can just like look at it and match it as it follows. And yeah, then you should just try and kind of organize the cable nice and tidily. And yeah, I hope it goes well for you. My cable management was okay, so I just tucked that under there. Then the cable, yeah, it was kind of nice. I did a neat job. Okay, so next bit, wait, what am I doing here? Oh yeah, I've just showing that the case needs to be taken apart like fully. I just took it fully apart so it's easier for everything. And installing my IO shield. And make sure it pops in like every corner. It's very important to do that. Yeah, just make sure it kind of pops in every corner. And yeah, kind of check it. With my IO shield, there's different IO shields. There's the one where it's got like silver pins on the back. There's the one with sponge like mine, and then there's the pre-installed on the motherboard. Pre-installed on the motherboard I would say is the best. Then the pins are just the most annoying, and I've got the sponge, which I wouldn't say is annoying, but it kind of makes your motherboard harder to install. Okay, so here when it comes to the power supply, I'm just unboxing it, just putting all this stuff aside, then taking the cables out. Now when it comes to cables, I'm only taking the motherboard cable, the CPU cable, and the PCIe cable. It'll be very obvious, PCIe is just graphics card. I don't need any more power because the motherboard's already supplying power to my M.2 SSD. But if you like using SATA, I think SATA power for your SSD or HDD, you have to take that out as well. And a new diagram will pop up in a sec. Okay, here you go. So you put the SATA power cable into the power supply. It'll be very obvious which end to which bit, and then plug the second bit into the SSD or HDD. It'll be quite easy to tell which slot in. Then you plug in the SATA cable to the HDD or SSD and into the motherboard connector. This will ensure that the HDD or SSD will get power from the power supply and be able to send data to the motherboard. And yeah, that's probably the simplest I could put it. Now I'm here, I'm just removing the power supply, and if you see that residue, it's because I was messing around with like some rubber feet to try and make it like less slippy, but it just didn't work. I needed to put it on the other side, so just ignore that sticky residue, you won't have that. And here I'm just covering my PSU. I took an SFX PSU because I actually tried to mod my case to make it a full ATX power supply fit, but it just make my whole case ugly because they'll be sticking out cables. Like, yeah, I was just like, I'm not messing with that. So in a normal case, you'd want to attach all the needed things to the power supply, but because I've got a small case, I found it more comfortable to install it to the actual motherboard first. So to the motherboard, the only things you need to install is the CPU power and motherboard power. If you have a better, more power hungry chip, then you might need two CPU headers. Oh yeah, and as here I'm showing, there's fixed power supplies, semi-modular power supplies, and fully modular power supplies. The fixed power supply just means that there's no cables you can detach, it's just all fixed. Semi-modular, there's some that you can detach, and fully modular, which is the one I have, is fully detachable. The only problems with fixed ones are you can never like take them all off. As you can see, I've slowed down the video so I can kind of talk more about it. And yeah, so with fixed, there's a lot of cables you have and you can never remove them, just so like, you know, it's also cheaper to get it. I mean, it's fine, I used to use one, but in a small case you kind of want it. And here, as you see, there's cable mod and cable combs. These are basically the premium cables you can buy, and they're kind of a paracord like texture, which you can replace for these stock cables. And yeah, this will make your build look so much better. But guys, if you have a big case, don't worry, you can get like extensions which you plug into these stock cables. So even if you have a fixed power supply, you can still have the nice cables. The only problem is there'll be a lot of cables. And yeah, okay, now that we have, oh yeah, now I'm showing that I'm changing it for a Phillips head 2 screw bit or screwdriver, because now pretty much all the screws from now, apart from the M.2 in a PC, is just going to be Phillips head 2. It's all going to work. And yeah, yeah, so when it comes to compatibility with like coolers and everything, you just have to remember the same chipset, not chipset, the like mount, like what is it called? It's like what your CPU goes to, like, so there's AM4, oh it's socket, yeah, I forgot, it's socket type. So there's AM4 for AMD, like the most common ones are AM4 because the other ones are like older generations. Then with like Intel, it's like LGA 1151 and other things like that. And that's just the only thing you need to remember for compatibility when it comes to coolers. Okay, now that it shows my motherboards, there's Mini ITX, Micro ITX, ATX and eATX. Mini ITX is the one I'm using. Most people will be using ATX because they're using a normal size PC. Mini ITX has 2 RAM slots max, Micro ATX has 2 to 4, ATX has 4 RAM slots, eATX I'm pretty sure is always 8. And yeah, so here, as shown in the video footage, I'm screwing down the motherboard with the screws given in the case. Normally you want to do a cross kind of thing. You go from diagonal line, or in like a diagonal pattern, so you go bottom left to top right, or bottom right to top left. But because this, so I was talking earlier how sponges are annoying me. I had to like firmly hold my thingy, firmly hold my motherboard up to the I/O shield, because of the sponge. It was kind of pushing it out with an immense force, so I actually had to fully like push it. But you know what, most people probably won't find the problem. Maybe it's just me, because I don't think I've heard anyone else complaining it, but you know, I'm just talking about my own experiences. And I didn't mention earlier, but when I was talking about the SATA power cables for SSDs and HDDs, they come included with your motherboard, so don't worry about having to buy them. And yeah, so once you buy the like 7 parts you've picked, or 8 parts I think it might be for a PC, I don't know. Yeah, once you've picked all your parts, I'm pretty sure you can build the PC fully without having to buy anything else. I mean, I had to buy an extension for the addressable RGB until I found out that the Aura sync is kind of trash in my opinion. I just prefer to put the cooler like separately, because I mean, I wish like it did work, but you know what is what it is. And yeah, so that's probably about it. And here I'm just gonna show that you're just screwing it down, and I've put the thingy power cables inside the case because I just find it easier, because later on it might be hard in a small case like this. and I forgot to mention, but this case is made for SFX to ATX Power. Oh yeah, I haven't talked about that. There's ATX and SFX Power Supplies. SFX is like tiny. ATX is normal size, which you'd need in a normal computer. Um, and yeah, so this can fit both, and you'd be like, the thing is with this case, I just didn't like it because you'd either have to have a very small air cooler or a water cooler. You see, I don't want to spend any more money, so I just went with this, and it kind of worked out actually. And tell you what, SFX Power Supply was needed. I was like very determined to get an ATX to fit, but you know what, is what it is. And going back to CPUs, like there's two kind of numbers in it. There's generation, and there's like just the lineup, which is lineups like i3, Ryzen 3 and stuff like that. Generation is just like every like year or two, or even half a year sometimes, pretty sure, a new generation is released. Actually, it's not half a year, that's a bit of an exaggeration. A year or two there is one released, and you know, when it's being released, there's like increased performance with it, because you know, as years go on, you want increased performance, otherwise why would you upgrade your system? So with CPUs, there's cores and threads, which are kind of just like, I'll explain it in a second, and there's just speeds in megahertz. So Intel's known for way higher clocks, so speeds in megahertz, like they're known for better overclocking, I would say, and stuff like that. But AMD's kind of on their tails now. In performance, they're pretty much destroying Intel everything when it comes to like workloads, editing and stuff like that, I would say. But then there's Intel, which are just better pure performance gaming. Like if you want pure performance gaming, right now, as of now, like where 10th gen has released and Ryzen 3000 has released, I would say Intel is still the better one. But that could change with Ryzen 4000, which many people are actually saying, like, from my experience of watching many YouTubers, they're kind of saying that they're expecting the, you know, the Ryzen 4000 to kind of destroy it. And yeah. Okay, so I'm still scrolling in. I've kind of slowed it down so you can, you know, um, just. I was gonna talk over this, but there's not much. Wait, what haven't I talked about? Okay, so I forgot to talk about RAM. So I talked about how there's CL factor, there's megahertz, but I forgot to say there's also aesthetics. Like these days, aesthetics is everything. Like that's why people have pushed RGB so much, even though I'm not a big fan of it. Obviously, my like whole PC is full out RGB for the video, but I normally keep it off, or I do smart from Aura Sync, which basically just shows the temperature your CPU's at. And when it comes to CPU, oh right, okay, I didn't realize, but in the video I've kind of moved on. So now it's the front I/O connectors. Don't get worried about them, because, okay, so there's PSU front panel connectors, and there's power supply connectors. I would say they're the two kind of groups of cables, and then there's obviously the ones in between for HDDs and SSDs, like power cables. But so basically, there's, for my case, there's USB, there's front I/O. Well, front I/O is the USB, but you know, there's the like really annoying ones. So there's USB audio. No, what is it? HD audio, which is very self-explanatory. Because if you look at the thing and then you look for the pins corresponding to it, it'll be very easy to notice. If not, then just go in your motherboard manual, look for it, and this is what a HD audio pin looks like. If you look under it, well, if you look at the pins and now look at the pin layout, it's very easy, because I think there's only one of these kind of on the motherboard, so it'll be very easy to tell. And yeah, just plug that in. I've kind of messed up a few times. Trust me, it's not as easy as it looks. I mean, you will get it eventually, and if you plug it in wrong, nothing goes wrong as long as you quickly change it. Yeah. It's just hard when you have like fat fingers and you just can't fit it in. Like, I'm 16 years old, I don't think I've fully grown yet, and my fingers are still kind of too thick for this kind of job. So anyways, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for the HD audio. I didn't mention earlier, but the part where I was screwing down the motherboard, it took so long because I kept on dropping this one screw because it was like very hard to kind of reach it within the case, and my screwdriver is quite thick, so it was very hard to screw down. That's the reason it took so long. Anyway, this HD audio is kind of taking me long. I think I've finally got it though. And the thing is, even if you like let's say your cable management's like very hard in your tiny case, there is still a workaround. Like if you don't attach the HD audio at all or the USB at all, then the only thing you're missing out is the front I/O. So like as long as you put in the like very annoying little connectors on, then you can still power it on, you can still reset it. The only thing you're missing out on is, you know, at the front of your PC where you have USBs and audio plugs. That's the only thing that won't work if you didn't already know already. And yeah, I think now I'm gonna take care of the 3.1 USB. Yeah, I'm getting those moved out the way. So I've got the connector. I'm trying to show it. And again, another thing that's very easy to find, like there's only like one connector, and it's like very easy to tell which bit on the motherboard it goes to, because it's just, I mean, when I was building my first PC, which was like 2 or 3 years ago, I was like really scared, because I was just like, okay, I'm gonna muddle up these cables. But now that I've built this is my second PC I've built, and it's just so easy. Like you can, like, as long as you just look at the things, the holes corresponding to the motherboard, you could pretty much do it without a manual easily. Obviously if you want the 100% be right and everything go 100% to plan, then you'd want to check, but like apart from that, it's all good. And the thing is, I've always had a fear of, because when I've watched you, actually, never mind, I'll talk about that later. So here are the like thingies arranged accordingly, and what's it called? You'll find that in the motherboard manual, like, yeah, you'll find out in the motherboard manual how to like order them for everything to work. Yeah, and the thing I was talking about earlier, I've always been scared. Okay, now I'm just taking out the GPU from the box, the amazing Founders Edition. Right now I've only bought it because of coronavirus driving prices up quite a bit, so I've kind of, you know, unboxing it here. And yeah, so, oh yeah, I forgot to actually show this on the video, but before you install your graphics card, you have to take out the brackets. Yeah, just showing off the GPU on my thick legs. Anyway, so I'm just slotting in the GPU, but before you put in the GPU, I'll show you in a sec, like, what I mean by the, like, slot kind of thing. Okay, so here you have to press that little thing to open up the pins in the slot, and then you just slide it in. Make sure you do it quite slowly, because you might scratch up the graphics card. It's a very tight fit. And I'm just moving the cables out the way. Okay, and here you just press that, and then you kind of move it along. Okay, so here normally, you know, where you see those two empty gaps, there'd be some brackets which you just need to remove. It's different for every PC, so I can't exactly, you know, tell you how to remove it. You can just, it's probably common sense. Like with this PC, it was very much to do with common sense on how to remove that. And then you just put that in. And I think I had a problem with was, first time I built my PC, when I plugged in the display ports and stuff, display ports for like 144 Hz and above, HDMI is fine if you're only going 60 Hz on your monitor, but obviously display ports just better. And yeah, so with the first time I built my PC, when I was plugging it in, okay, so here I'm just screwing it in to make it like hold. So I had a problem with plugging it in because I'd have these flickers on my screen. If you guys are having the same flickers, it's because the display port's not fully in, because like here it's like kind of obstructed by the case. I don't know why they designed the case like this. Maybe it's only my case, even though I've experienced it on all three cases I've had. And yeah, so it kind of obstructs it, makes it flicker, so make sure you push in the GPU to the I/O side, like push it in, so it's going to be fine. And yeah, So I was talking about I hate how I've watched many YouTubers and people have had failures in their PCs, like their RAM not working or anything. But to be honest, I've built 2 PCs in my life, and my friends that I know of have probably built around 3 people I know that I think have built their own PC, and none of us 5 people have ever had a problem with anything, I don't think. Um, and yeah, so, oh yeah, here I'm showing the 2 brands of GPUs, AMD and Nvidia, because CPUs we talk about Intel and AMD, GPUs it's Nvidia and AMD, and yeah, they're like the main companies for PCs, I'd say. The rest are just like, wait, I'll explain in a sec. So here I'm just plugging in the like PCIe power to the GPU. It all depends like how many you connect to each other. It just depends on your GPU. Some will only need 8, some will only need some actually GPUs I think now even that are produced like don't even need a power plug. I'm pretty sure a 1050 didn't need a plug, something like that. GTX 1050, that's old generation. Okay, so this is generation with GPUs, right? So there's AMD, which I basically don't know anything about, guys. Don't ever ask me about AMD GPUs. But when it comes to Nvidia GPUs, I know from the last few years or last few generations there were the generations went 9, 10, and now 20. The next GPUs that are coming out, which are Ampere, are going to be 30. So when I'm saying these numbers, there's also like an ending to it. So it was like the naming scheme was like 950s, 96. I don't know if 950s were a thing, but 960s, 970s, 980s. There's also been 980 Ti's. Ti's are basically better parts than the normal original one. They're kind of bridging the gap between the first one and the second one. So 960 is the worst, 980 was the best. Well, and then 980 Ti was slightly better than 980. 960 Ti, if that was ever a thing, I'm not quite sure, but it would have been near performance at 970. You get the kind of pattern now. So then there was 1070s, 1050s, 1050 Ti's, 1060s. There was no 1060 Ti because I kind of know the 10th generation, 20th gen, well, and the yeah 20th one. Not as much as the 9th because I didn't really know much about PCs then. And here I'm just putting in like the plugs for the GPU power cables, and yeah. So I've always been a Nvidia person. I've always just stuck to AMD, well no, Nvidia GPUs, and it's very good because I love GeForce experience. It like lets me only like record my kills. You know, all the kills I have on my YouTube. It kind of perfectly records it for me without me having to do as much work as I'd need to. I mean, sometimes it kind of bugs and it doesn't record some kills, which does bug me a bit because I do get some good kills that I just can't like get back. But over like all this time, it's been good. The reason why a lot of tech YouTubers don't recommend AMD products is because of their drivers. They're kind of like buggy and crashy. But obviously, if you want price to performance, AMD is better than Nvidia, according to a lot of YouTubers I've listened to. Well, like maybe not in every aspect, but generally. Here I'm just. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I bought a Psu Extender. Well, yeah, extension so that I can like put it to the back. And me and my dad actually spent like 3 or 4 hours making a custom plate for the back because this case is obviously designed for having the PSU mounted to the back, but me and my dad were just like, nah. And then we just created our own plate. It did take a lot of time because we had to like figure stuff out. Figured if we want a pattern with the holes and ventilation, because if it was just fully blocked it'd be a problem. And I am going to talk about thermals. So thermals in my PC aren't great. They're good enough, like obviously it's not going to 95 pretty much ever. Maybe if you go full stress test it might, but most of the time when I'm gaming it doesn't go above like 86 degrees max. I mean that's not good, I don't like it, but I just don't like want to spend much more money. Maybe later if my PC actually starts to struggle or something. And this case does fit very, very tall air coolers now that I've made this mod. Like, it can pretty much fit anything. The only thing I'm concerned of is just the power supply kind of blocking airflow, if you know what I mean. Um, So yeah, I'd probably recommend a fan that's in the same position as mine, because if it was sideways it could just be throwing air at the power supply. And I've actually researched this, because in small cases you kind of have your cables bunched up, and your GPU backplate and just GPU backplate gets quite hot. So I was very concerned about maybe my cables melting and destroying my PC or something. But I've actually researched that most cables within a PC are designed for this heat, and yeah, so it'll be pretty normal and fine. Even if the GPU does get quite hot and the power supply cables do touch it, it'll be perfectly fine. Trust me on that. And here I'm just using zip ties. I think this is my first test round, so I don't think this actually works out. But it was just kind of trial and error, because I had thick cables, thick zip ties, thin zip ties, and I think I went with two thin zip ties just joined together in the end, because it was just more convenient. Because I don't exactly want the power supply kind of floating around about. Um, you know, it's just you don't want that to happen. And I've actually figured with this case, it's basically kind of like a box that just holds all your stuff together, and it's just as simple as that. Okay, so these are the rubber feet I was talking about. I'm putting them on the side where the GPU is gonna, let's say, I'm gonna talk about this in a sec, but I'm putting these rubber feet so it doesn't scratch up the GPU backplate. And these are perfectly fine. I don't think there's gonna be any problem with them. They're just nice so it doesn't scratch it. And with this case, I've realised if you take the panel off and just have it kind of like an open test bench, not only will you get better thermals, but you can actually make it look like a normal case, because this is meant to be a small and compact case. But let's say you buy like a few tall rubber feet or something and put them on the side, you can actually make it have the same kind of layout as a normal PC, where the GPU's kind of in the layout you can see in the video now, instead of just having a box just sitting there. Yeah, it's a nice aesthetic. So let's say you just want your PC to have a nice time, a cool time, you can just take the thing off. And yeah, I kind of bought a small case so it's like portable in case I want to take it somewhere. And here I'm just figuring out with the zip ties. Okay, now that I have this spare time where I'm just figuring out how to do these zip ties, I'm gonna explain the simples behind PCs. So the simples are, there's components that you need for a PC to work are you need a CPU, you need RAM, you need a motherboard, you need CPU cooler, you need a GPU, you need a case, you need a power supply, you need storage, and they're basically, I'm pretty sure I've named all of them. If I haven't, just tell me down below. But yeah, and so how to make this easily explainable. So power supply, it's self-explanatory. It supplies power to your system. Without it, nothing's going to turn on. There's going to be no LED indication of anything. What's next? Okay, CPU is the thing that kind of handles your tasks, yeah, handles your tasks. GPU is kind of more towards gaming, but it does kind of help in other things. Like GPU is just basically a boost. I mean, you can't really play games on integrated graphics. Maybe they're kind of making a technology with APUs that maybe you can now, but it's still never going to be as good as dedicated graphics with GPUs. So yeah, GPU's just if you ever want to game, I'd recommend not gaming on integrated graphics unless it's an APU, but even APUs I don't think are good yet, just good enough yet. Then there's, what else is there? There's RAM. The RAM, basically, whatever you're doing on your PC is being, the RAM is doing it for you. The storage is just there to hold, the memory that's just coming out your RAM. So your RAM, let's say you're playing games, your RAM's taking care of that. Let's say you're recording or editing, your RAM's taking care of that. With the CPU, well, with everything obviously working together. But let's say the actual stuff that's happening is all being taken care of by the RAM, and then it's just going to storage after. Sorry for the noise in the background. Yeah, in the countryside there's bloody tractors. This is why I hate this place. Anyway, Yeah, so that's why I've got bad ping. Anyways, when it comes to what was I talking about? I was talking about RAM, yeah, so it's kind of the things you're doing in your PC actively. It's going to the storage, obviously, like let's say you're downloading something, it will go to your storage, but it kind of just gets hidden and just sleeps there. Unless you open it up, then your RAM's going to open it up and use it. I don't know how to explain it even more, but that's pretty much the basics. The motherboard is just where everything plugs into, like, if you think about it, everything is going to the motherboard. The motherboard's just there, screwed into some metal standoffs, and everything goes into it. CPU goes into it, CPU cooler goes into it, power supply is giving power, it's going into it, GPU is being slotted into it. Oh yeah, and as you can see, I'm showing off the rubber feet. They're kind of going to be there for support on the GPU. There's the front I/O. I've kind of ripped the cables up by accident just using the tension, but it's totally fine. The zip ties, I'm kind of trying to work it out here. I think it's going to be fine there. Just cutting it off, yeah. I mean, it's perfectly fine as it is now. And yeah, that's basically PC's kind of explained. Wait, have I missed anything? Okay, let's just move on to compatibility. So with PCs, let's just talk about cases and motherboards first. So a case, a full tower case, or even mid tower, I think they're sometimes called, can fit ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX. Obviously, I don't see a point of buying a mini ITX motherboard for a big tower PC because, I mean, they can even cost more than normal ATX motherboards. Yeah, it still works though. I mean, let's say I have this PC but I want a new like look, then I could just transfer this into a ATX case. Yeah, and when it comes to mini cases like this, then obviously you can only go mini ITX. There's obviously micro ATX cases out there, stuff like that. And the thing is with mini ITX, only 2 RAM slots. Obviously these days you can get a lot in 1 RAM slot. Like you could, I'm pretty sure these days you can even get maybe 32 gigs of RAM. Yeah, you can get 32. I don't know if you can go over that, but 32 on one stick times that by 2, that's 64 gigs of RAM. That is totally overkill. These days I'm using 30, no, I'm using 16 and I'm way more than fine. Um, and yeah, so that's when it comes to motherboard and thing compatibility. Then there's ATX Power Supplies. ATX Power Supplies fit into pretty much everything apart from small cases like this. So like all cases out there should really support it. There's obviously like monster power supplies which have like an extreme amount of wattage needed. Oh yeah, I haven't talked about wattage. So PC part picker, right? If you like put everything as you want, right? um, as you want. What am I talking about? Basically, if you um, what am I talking about? I'm kind of lost for words. Okay, so PC Power Pick is perfect because once you've like put your whole system together and put it on PC Power Picker, it'll estimate the amount of watts that you will need. Let's say it estimates 500 watts, which is a very, very good system because I'm pretty sure I checked earlier and a 2080 Ti with an i9-10900K, which is very power hungry, only needs 514 watts. But let's say you want to do overclocking and you want to be stable, then you want to go with 600 for a 2080 Ti, and I mean even that could be too little. But a lot of YouTubers are kind of exaggerating it. Like some people are just putting in like insane power supplies. I mean, I can't really say too much. I've got 650 watt power supply. As obviously, the more watts you have in your power supply, the more upgradability, which is the reason I took it. Like, oh yeah, and here I'm putting a support bracket to hold my PSU from falling to other places. So all of these things just stabling my power supply even more and more. And yeah, so um, the more watts you take, the better it is for future because as I've realised, PSUs haven't really changed much over the years, apart from just maybe getting slightly cheaper, slightly more expensive, different, I don't know. Here I'm actually connecting my LEDs. So I bought some LED strips and plugging into the addressable RGB header. So on the actual connector, it will have like 12 volt and stuff labelled, and so will it on the thingy on the motherboard. So you just have to kind of line it up perfectly, because if you do it the wrong way around, you could like break it. So once you've done it there, it's fine. Then you just put in the RGB daisy chainer with other LED strips. I'm just gonna try and make it as clean as possible. And yeah, so PC Power Picker is perfect for everything. Like, not only will it show you the compatibility between GPUs, CPUs, motherboards, and pretty much everything. Like, there's something called Compatibility filter, which will literally just give you all the options available. Then there's also filters which you can change the price of the parts and everything. Um, and yeah, there's actually just many YouTubers also out there who kind of tell you what to do, and recommend stuff. And back to CPUs, because this is a large topic. i3 and Ryzen 3, I'd say, are budget. i9 and Ryzen 9 are basically best performance if you don't really care about price, because they do get quite pricey. So yeah, be prepared. There's also Threadripper from Ryzen, and I'm pretty sure Xeon, and X series from Intel, which are just overkill. Like, they're not even anything anyone should consider unless you're proper professional. Not even gaming streamers use them. Gaming streamers normally go with i9 9900Ks or 10900Ks if they've bought a PC recently, which I'd still prefer AMD, but you know, it is what it is. Streamers are probably just like, oh, build me a nice PC. I want Intel, not Ryzen, because Ryzen just don't have the reputation yet, from streamers, and yeah, it's just basically how it is. Um, and to be honest, I'm pretty sure that YouTubers have tested an i9 900K and i9 9900K are still slightly better at the pure performance than Ryzen 9 3950X or 3900X. Um, and then when it comes to Ryzen 5 and i5s, are actually becoming perfect for gaming. Like, you can even stream with i5s and Ryzen 5s these days, which you couldn't say 3 or 2 years ago even. Right, I say Ryzen 5 3600 and i5 like 10600K are probably way better than you need for streaming. Obviously, I went for the Ryzen 7 3700X, which, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Ryzen 7's like basically an upgrade to Ryzen 5, but not like thingy level performance yet like Ryzen 9. Okay, so here's the custom backplate I've made, just slotting that in. And yeah, what else is there to say? There's also the fact that, um, so I'm pretty sure, if I'm not wrong, Ryzen 5s, I'm not sure if they're all like this, but the most common ones that I remember are 6 cores and 12 threads. Obviously you can check it. 6 cores and 12 threads. Ryzen 3s and i3s, which have actually been recently, even though they're budget, people like, I think the Ryzen 3 third generation Ryzen 3 is actually good for gaming now that benchmarks are out. I'm pretty sure a lot of YouTubers are praising it. And yeah, so they're not even budget anymore anyways. So I'm pretty sure Ryzen 3 and i3s are 4 cores and 8 threads, or 4 cores and 4 threads, something like that. Then Ryzen 5 and i5s are 6 cores, 12 threads, pretty sure all of the lineup. Then there's Ryzen 7, no, have I said Ryzen 5? No, yeah, I have. Okay, Ryzen 7 and i7 are 8 cores and 16 threads from now on. Like, i7 9700K had 8 cores and 8 threads, but now the 10th gen is 8 cores and 16 threads with even higher clocks. Um, then there's i9s and Ryzen 9s, where i9 is 8 cores and 16 threads for last gen and the present gen. And then Ryzen is, I'm pretty sure the 3950X has 12 cores and 24 threads, something insane like that. And it's still on the AM4 platform. I'm still very shocked that my motherboard is compatible with a 3950X. Like, that's just scary. Such a small form factor. Obviously the temps would be another thing, but it's just that it's possible. It's kind of mad that AMD have managed to do that. Okay, so I've installed my custom plate for everything, and yeah. Yeah, so that's basically how it goes. When I look for parts, like let's say Ryzen or AMD or even Nvidia when it comes to CPUs and GPUs, which are the main things that are going to differ performance. Obviously with RAM, it can kind of increase or decrease your FPS from time to time. Obviously there's a diminishing return where there's might be a big difference between 8 and 16 gigs, but then when you go from like 64 to 128, there's basically no difference. But when you're looking for like brands to choose for CPU and GPU, I recommend just typing in like um, different systems and just comparing, because a lot of benchmark things out there are like, okay, so here I'm just managing the cables, don't worry about that, I've already like plugged everything in, and yeah. And so what was I talking about? I'm gonna try and remember what I was talking about. Oh yeah, so these days there's many people who are benchmarking and things like that. So they'll have like, let's say you're looking for a GPU, they'll probably have your GPU paired with the best CPU for that task. So let's say they're doing gaming, they'll probably have a 900K or i9 9900K if they haven't upgraded yet. And it will just clearly show that if you had the best CPU on the market, how much performance would you be losing on your GPU if you went with a different one to a different one, and then vice versa with CPUs, they'd pair it with a 2080 Ti most likely and just compare, and it will just clearly show if you had the best CPU what like performance would your GPU get, and if you had the best CPU what would your GPU get. And if you're going for gaming, you'd be pretty much, I don't think you'd see much of a difference between CPUs. Like CPUs have kind of also a diminishing return where after a point GPU's the main thing that will differ performance in gaming. So like at my CPU from this, if I had to upgrade, I don't think there'd be any point in going i9 9900K. I mean, it would give me better performance overall, but would it be worth the like extra money? I don't think so. It'd just be worth to upgrade my GPU or something. And yeah, so that's how I kind of pick out my parts. Then I'd just recommend at least 16 gigs of RAM these days, even if like you're going budget system 16 gigs, just do it, just do it. Um, and as I said, PC Part Picker is the god. They'll literally show you what like compatibility for anything. Like trust me, PC Part Picker. If you don't know what like to do and you're a beginner, trust me, PC Part Picker is the way. Obviously, when you get like more known in the subject of PCs, you'll be able to tell what to choose. And here I'm just tidying up the cables in the case, fixing the panel, and soon I'll be done. Everything went very smoothly. I didn't have any failure for parts or anything. And then when it comes to, yeah, my screws kind of fell. The side panel's just easy. And here, I got a post. There's my Coke bottle on the floor, my Wi-Fi antenna plugged in. Everything's messy. As I said, because of coronavirus, everything has been ruined. But I'm still trying to get out content for you guys. Hope you appreciate it. And here's my RGB PC. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any like questions or anything, links will be down below obviously, and I really hope you did enjoy this very long PC build guide and explanation on PCs. Yeah, please like and subscribe. This did take me, I would say it's probably going to take me from my estimates probably around 10 hours, so maybe even longer, maybe 20 if we add up the PC build. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed that. If you didn't watch the whole thing, then don't worry. It is just what everyone needs. I'll kind of do timestamps so you can kind of choose what you want. And yeah, thanks for watching. I do really appreciate you guys.